Hello, everyone. Welcome to our National Citizenship Services Day virtual event hosted by PALCUS. We are really happy to have you all with us today because we get lots and lots of questions about the citizenship process, and we will be addressing some very specific topics today that hopefully speak to a lot of the questions that we get. Um, Presenters today are Sabrina Brum from Portugal Solutions, Monique Kelly Valance from Marie B. Kelly and Associates, and Nelson Ponta from Becoming a Portuguese Citizen, and Sandra Carapinha from Learn European Portuguese Online. They will be addressing not only certain paths to citizenship, but also Sandra will be talking about the SIPL language test, which is the requirement for getting citizenship through grandparents. Yes, marriage and divorces, which is actually quite important because I think, something that you brought up, Monique, in your presentation about if you've been divorced for 20 years here, you're still married there. So yes, Sabrina, please take it away.
Yeah, Monique, thank you so much for your presentation. It was a perfect segue into exactly what Monique was just saying, that, a lot of times people born in Portugal, they come here, they're single, they get married here, and they don't register their marriage in Portugal and they think it's fine. Or, similar thing happens where you get married in Portugal, you come to the US, you get divorced here, and you think, no, I don't have to register my divorce. It's all set. I'm never going to need it. There are a bunch of different reasons why you do need to register your marriage and your divorce in Portugal. There's benefits and there's consequences. So let me just pull up. So for anyone who is just kind of hopping on to the webinar, my name is Sabrina. I am one of the consultants for Portugal Solutions. We are based in Rhode Island. So we usually work with the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area, but we have clients all over the US. We do a number of different services working with the Portuguese and Luso-American communities. And one of the big things that we do in our office is Portuguese citizenship applications, Social Security applications to Portugal, all that kind of stuff. And so the main thing that we see a lot of times is marriage and divorce registrations not matching in the US as they do in Portugal. And it's really important to make sure that everything matches all across the board. So if we're going to get right into the nitty gritty of it, the Portuguese Civil Registration Code actually says that civil registration is required for Portuguese citizens, even if they live abroad. So even if you live on foreign territory, especially in regard to marriage and this dissolution, so separation via divorce, an annulment, the death of a spouse, you do have to make sure that that is up to date in Portugal. I'm not really going to get into why you have to register your spouse's death in Portugal if they did pass away, but it would be for the same exact reason as a divorce, and kind of what Monique had touched upon a little while ago. At the end of the day, you just need to make sure that everything matches what's in the US and what's in Portugal. So right off the bat, why should I register my marriage? So the number one reason that people register their marriage is if they are applying for citizenship. So the easiest one and the one that makes the most sense to people is if you are applying for citizenship through a Portuguese spouse. So obviously, if you are going to be applying through your spouse who is a Portuguese citizen, you are going to have to register your marriage in Portugal because that is the proof that you've actually been married to this person. So of course, the applicant has to be married to the Portuguese citizen for at least 3 years to apply for their Portuguese citizenship. And the marriage must be registered in Portugal before the application is submitted. So a couple of different ways that you can register that marriage, as Monique was talking about a little while ago. You can either go through your local consulate to do that, which is easier in some places than it is in others. Not all of the consulates do it right now. Actually, some of them are not doing any kind of registro civil, no death registrations, no marriage registrations. Some of them are doing it, but you have to have an appointment. Appointments are booked far out. So If you're not able to get into your local consulate, we always recommend having somebody who's going to be your procurador in Portugal and is able to register that at one of the registros civis. Just like Monique said, make sure it's somebody that you know, make sure it's someone you trust, or hire someone to do that for you. The second way that you should have your marriage registered, and it's the one that gives people the most grief, unfortunately, is if you are applying for Portuguese citizenship through your parents. So the easiest way I can say it is, if the Portuguese parent or the Portuguese parents were married at the time of the applicant's birth, a marriage must be registered. That's a question that we get all the time, every single time we're doing a citizenship application. The baseline of it is that the easiest answer is everything has to match in Portugal the same way that it does in the US. So essentially, when you are becoming a Portuguese citizen, what they are doing in Portugal is they're taking the information that's on your birth certificate and they're creating a Portuguese birth certificate for you. But at the same time, they're updating the information for your Portuguese parent or your Portuguese parents. So if at the time of your birth, your parents were married, they have to update that. It's got to reflect exactly what was going on at the time of your birth. So it is required. I get this question every single day when I meet with clients. They always say, well, what if my parents are divorced? Do I still need to register their marriage for the citizenship because they already got divorced? My parents don't speak to each other. My dad's not going to want to register the marriage. I don't even know where one of the parents are. Unfortunately, you do have to register a marriage if you are applying for your Portuguese citizenship through your parents and they were married at the time of your birth. The marriage has to be registered. For some people, they are okay with just keeping their parents married in Portugal, and they don't have any land, they don't have any other consequences to that. So the marriage is going to stay registered in Portugal unless you register a death or a divorce to get rid of that marriage registration. And I'm going to get into in a little bit why it's important to register the divorce, because there's a bunch of other consequences to that. But some people are just okay with staying married in Portugal and not doing anything else with that. It's you do what you want to do. It's your decision. But it is also important to note that a divorce process and the applicant citizenship process can be going on at the same time. So if my parents were married here and divorced here, and I submit my citizenship application after I already submitted their marriage application, and then my parents want to get divorced right away, their divorce process can be going on in the background while your citizenship application is going on. So you don't have to, wait until their divorce is registered to keep going with your citizenship. So that's another common question that we get a lot.
But you can't submit the marriage registration and divorce registration at the same time, right? You have to wait for the marriage registration to be complete.
Wait for the parents' marriage to be complete. It's done pretty quickly depending on how it's getting processed. Even if you're going through the consulate, once you submit it, it usually gets done pretty fast. The divorce is the thing that takes a little longer. It can take months for a divorce to get done, but it can be going on in the background while your citizenship is also being processed. So you don't have to wait for everything to be done. So another reason to register marriage is something that people don't usually think about, and that is retirement benefits for a spouse or for a widow of a pensioner. So if you or a parent or someone worked in Portugal and they were deducting, it's descontar in Portuguese. I always mix that word up. If they were deducting to one of the Social Security offices in Portugal, they may be entitled to a monthly pension once they come of age to retire. So if this person is getting a retirement benefit and then they pass away, their spouse may also be entitled to half of that monthly pension. But if Portugal doesn't know that they're married, then that person is not going to be or may not be entitled to that pension. So it would really behoove you that, if you were married in the US and you're getting a pension from Portugal, make sure that you register that marriage in Portugal so that if something does happen to you, or in the case of your parents, that the other person is going to get at least half of that because, they're entitled to it. And then the most important reason is the one that we see very often: inheritance and property ownership cases. Marital status plays a crucial role in the inheritance process or in the property ownership process. If your marriage status does not match in the US as what is in Portugal, you can have a lot of delays in the process. Procurações can get rejected. The beneficiaries are not going to be designated correctly because you may still be single in Portugal, so your spouse is not going to get included. Your kids are not going to get included. So it's something that you're going to want to make sure is always up to date. How an individual's marital status or civil status is registered in Portugal is going to have a huge impact on who is entitled to what the percentage is. We always recommend, that you contact a Portuguese lawyer or Portuguese solicitor if you're getting into any kind of inheritance cases or property cases. In Portugal, it's called an habilitação de herdeiros, if you've ever heard that term before. It always has to be done with a Portuguese lawyer or solicitor. Portugal Solutions doesn't give out legal advice, but we've got plenty of lawyers and solicitors that we can recommend to you. So if anyone is ever looking for some advice on a case like that, feel free to reach out. And then for the same exact reason that you have to have your marriage registered, you should also have your divorce registered. So if we're talking about the retirement benefits again, if you are not married in Portugal, your spouse may not be entitled to part of that pension. And in that same exact way, if you are not divorced in Portugal, your spouse could potentially be entitled to half of that pension as well. So you want to make sure that all of that is up to date. If you are remarried, for example, in the US, and you didn't register your first divorce and therefore didn't register your second marriage, that second spouse may not actually be getting half of that retirement pension. So make sure that that's always up to date. When we get back to the inheritance and the property ownership, same exact thing as why it's important to make sure the marriage is registered. If your divorce is not registered properly in Portugal, then it's going to be the same thing. Your spouse may be entitled to a part of the property, the inheritance. They may have to sign off on a procuração, which can get really awkward and weird because you don't know where it is that they're living. They don't want to sign off on something, and it just slows down processes. Things get stuck because of it. So just always make sure that you have everything up to date. But this is super important to remember. A divorce is a legal process. So while it's super easy to register your marriage in Portugal or register your marriage at the consulate, you just take your marriage certificate and the IDs and you bring it to the consulate, or you go to the Registro Civil. It's not so easy to do that with a divorce. Consulates and conservatórios do not register divorces that occurred on foreign territory until a final confirmation is made by the Portuguese courts. So it has to be a Portuguese lawyer that is going to submit the divorce process in Portugal. A lot of times people ask me why that is. Why can't I just bring my divorce decree to the consulate or give it to a procurador and have them take it to the Registro Civil and they accept it? The way I explain it to people is, in the US, you can just show up to the courts and get married, right? And there's no lawyer that you need. But when you have to get divorced, you do have to, bring a lawyer into the mix so that you can get divorced. Same thing in Portugal. Essentially, what the Portuguese courts are going to do is they're going to look at the final divorce decree and they're just going to confirm that it matches with what the Portuguese laws are. So laws are different in every country, especially in the US versus Portugal. So they need to make sure that they have the equivalent, essentially, of what is written in your final divorce decree as to what they have in Portugal. And when you're going to be submitting a divorce process, you have to make sure that you always have the final divorce decree with an apostille. So if the final divorce decree is coming from the court in your state, super easy to get the apostille. Just kind of depends on where it is that you're living, how long it's going to take for the apostille to be given to you. In Rhode Island, luckily, we can just show up. In Massachusetts, we show up to the Secretary of State with like 50 documents for apostilles, and they get them done in 15 minutes. So I can't believe that you guys have to wait so long. I feel so bad when I hear the difference between the two coasts. It's so crazy.
We have to wait, and we don't have all the Portuguese products and restaurants that you do either, right? So we're just so deprived out here, Sabrina.
I feel bad for someone that lives in Minnesota to the Portuguese people in Minnesota. Good for you. You're really, you know? But Portugal Solutions is here to help if you are looking to especially do a divorce process in Portugal. So we are not attorneys in the US. We are not attorneys in Portugal. So we do not give any legal advice. What we do in our office is we provide administrative support for divorce cases. So we can facilitate the communication between you and your Portuguese lawyer. If you don't have a Portuguese lawyer in mind, we've got a list of lawyers that we work with, but we'll work with anyone. Essentially, what we do is just translate the documents that have to be translated, just typically a divorce decree, birth certificate, whatever it may be. We review the supplemental documents, make sure it all looks good, and then send it off to the lawyer, and the lawyers have to take it from there. Just going to reiterate, all civil records, any records should always be up to date in Portugal and the US. There's benefits, there's consequences to both. So just make sure that everything matches all across the board, and you shouldn't have any problems. All right. Any questions?
Yes, we did get a couple, but I have two. So, someone got divorced 30 years ago here in the States, and they don't have their final divorce decree anymore. Is it the same process of getting a birth certificate? You just go to your local, I don't even know where you go anymore, but can you get a copy, like a certified copy?
Yes, you can get a certified copy, at least where we live. So I can't really attest to what all of the states are like. Where we live, you will go to whatever the court is that registered the final divorce decree. So, in Rhode Island, we're going to go to the court in whatever the city is, unless it was the Supreme Court in your state. But usually final divorce decrees are at the courts. They're not typically at the civil registry office. So that's something that you're going to want to confirm. And you can always call your vital records office and ask them, call one of the courts, wherever it was. If you have a vague idea of where it was that you got divorced, call your local court and just ask them. They should have the record. Over here, we can just go pick it up same day or the next day, and they have the stamps on it. And then once you have the final divorce decree with the stamp from the court and it's signed by the judge, you can then take it to be apostilled.
Okay. And then also, if you are, let's say you're married to a Portuguese citizen here, but you didn't register your marriage in Portugal, if your Portuguese citizen spouse passes away, it's not like you automatically get anything that they had in Portugal, because according to Portugal, you don't exist as the spouse, correct?
Not necessarily. So it's kind of on a case-to-case basis. Most of the time, that is correct. So if the person is still single in Portugal, as far as they're concerned, they're single, and there's nothing that Social Security is going to do. Sometimes it's just a process of, registering the marriage post-mortem, which you can do, and then they update their records, and then you would apply. But it's good to do it, while you're still alive, because it makes it easier. It's going to save you the hassle of the what ifs.
Okay, great. So we have a question here. Let's see. How can we tell if our parents' marriage has already been registered?
Great question. Yeah. Super easy to figure out if a marriage has been registered in Portugal. All you have to do is request the birth certificate for the Portuguese parent or Portuguese parents. The great thing about Portugal is on the back or on the second page of the updated birth certificates, they have everything that happened in a person's life. So it's going to say if a person was married, divorced, if they became a widow, if they died, everything is going to be up to date. So a lot of times we'll pull birth certificates and we find first marriages that kids didn't know about. We find out that people are still married in Portugal and they have no idea. It happens all the time. So the easiest way is to pull that updated birth certificate, which you can either order online, you can get it from the Registro Civil, wherever they were born, or you can get it from the consulate.
Got it. Here's an interesting one. So if I got a divorce 15 years ago and register the divorce now, what date will they use? Because that person inherited a house in Portugal after the divorce. So clearly not wanting the ex-spouse to have any claim, right? So will they use the date of the divorce or will they use a current date?
That's a good question that they're going to want to confirm with a lawyer, is the easiest way to say it. But what the Portuguese courts are going to do is they're going to take the information that was on the final divorce decree whenever that was prepared, and they're going to just confirm it. And that once that is confirmed in Portugal, that's what's going to be added to the person's record. So in theory, it'll be as of the date of the divorce when it was done in the United States. But if an inheritance process is already going, you're going to want to confirm with your lawyer, your solicitor, whoever it is that's working on the process, and just make sure that because there's already an inheritance case that's ongoing, there's not something that's going to get messed up along the way and somebody doesn't have to sign.
Okay. So this person's parents are not citizens, not Portuguese citizens. Do you still have to register their birth, marriage, and divorce in Portugal if you're going through grandparents?
No. So if you are going to apply through grandparents, and Nelson, if you want to chime in here, feel free. Technically, your parents do not have to register their marriage. They don't have to register their divorce. You just have to have the Portuguese grandparents' birth certificate, and you have to have your parent who is of Portuguese ancestry. So either the son or the daughter of that Portuguese grandparent's birth certificate. You don't have to register the marriage if you're applying through grandparents.
So again, for those who asked about contacting our folks on the webinar today, if you actually go to the PALCUS website and go up to the top, resources, consular, you will actually see that they are listed here. We're still adding Nelson's information here. Website updates tend to be a little slow, but again, we will send out information to contact him as well. We also have some of the Q&As that we do on these webinars. We've actually written them out on our website, and so the ones from today will be added eventually. So you can always go find them there. And then, as we talked about before, being a PALCUS member can actually really help your citizenship process. So if you're looking to take the simple test, then you can practice your Portuguese during our language conversation groups. And if you are applying through a spouse, you can use our membership as a way to show connection to the community. And there's just some other benefits to being a member. And very easy, you go to our website, click on become a member, and signing up takes 5 minutes. And membership starts at $50 for the year, so quite affordable. There you go. And with that, say obrigado. For me, obrigada. So thank you so much to our panelists. It's like such great information. I think things that we haven't really covered in detail in the past that we get lots of questions for. I know this is not going to be the last webinar that we have. So thank you all so much for your time. Really, really valuable. And thank you to all those who joined us either on Zoom or on Facebook. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us, reach out to our panelists, and good luck with your citizenship process application. Just stick with it. Eventually it will happen. And with that, we'll say have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks so much. Obrigado.